Part 1. I found a hidden camera in my apartment, but it wasn't watching me. I always thought I was careful, not paranoid, just aware. The kind of person who double checks the door before going to bed, who notices when something feels slightly off, even if there's no clear reason why. That's probably why I noticed it. Not immediately, not in a dramatic way, just gradually. It started with small things. The kind of things you don't question at first because they're too insignificant to mean anything. A chair in the kitchen that wasn't exactly where I left it. A glass in the sink when I was sure I hadn't used one that morning. My laptop slightly open, even though I always closed it completely before leaving. At first, I blamed myself. Long work hours, lack of sleep, routine blur. It happens. But then one night, something changed. I came home later than usual. It was close to midnight, the kind of quiet where even the sound of your own keys feels too loud. The apartment felt different. Not messy, not broken into, just used. There was a faint smell in the air, not strong enough to identify, but noticeable enough to make me pause in the doorway longer than I normally would. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. Complete silence. I locked the door behind me, walked in slowly, scanning the room without really thinking about it. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I went to the kitchen, poured myself some water, and that's when I noticed it. The glass I picked up was still warm. I froze. Not completely, just enough for my body to hesitate before catching up with my thoughts. There was no reason for it to be warm. I hadn't been home. No one had. At least, no one should have been. That was the first moment I felt it. Not fear. Not yet. Just awareness. That night, I didn't sleep well. Every small sound felt amplified. The hum of the fridge, the pipes in the walls, even my own breathing. I kept telling myself it was nothing. But something in the back of my mind had already started connecting dots I didn't fully understand yet. The next morning, I decided to be rational. I checked everything. Doors, windows, locks. Nothing broken. Nothing forced. I even checked the hallway camera outside my apartment. No one had entered. At least, no one visible. That should have been enough to calm me down. It wasn't. 2 days passed. Nothing unusual happened. No strange smells. No moved objects. And slowly, I started convincing myself that I had overreacted. Until I found a camera. It wasn't in an obvious place. Not on a shelf. Not facing the room like in movies. It was hidden, carefully, behind a small vent in the corner of my bedroom. The kind of detail you would never notice unless you were looking directly at it. And I wasn't. Not at first. I only saw it because the light hit it at the right angle. A tiny reflection, barely visible, but enough. I stepped closer, slowly, like getting too close might somehow trigger something. There it was, a small lens, perfectly still, pointing not at my bed, not at the door, at the wall. That didn't make sense. Why would someone place a hidden camera? Just to record a wall? I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand, trying to find a logical explanation. There wasn't one, so I did the only thing I could think of. I removed the vent, and that's when everything got worse. Behind it wasn't just wiring or pipes. There was space. Enough space for something or someone to be there. And inside that space, I saw another camera, facing the opposite direction, directly into the apartment next to mine. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The camera in my room wasn't there to watch me. It was there so someone could sit inside the walls and watch them. And suddenly, every strange thing I noticed before started to make sense. Because if someone had access to that space, then they didn't just have access to my apartment. They had access to all of them. And I had no idea how long they had been there. Part 2. I found a hidden camera in my apartment, but it wasn't watching me. For a long moment, I just stood there staring into that narrow space behind the wall. It felt wrong, not just unusual or unsettling. Wrong in a way that made your body react before your brain could even process it. There shouldn't have been space there. Not that much. Not in an apartment like this. I leaned in slightly, trying to see deeper into the gap. The second camera was mounted more carefully than the first one, fixed into the structure, angled perfectly toward the neighboring apartment. It wasn't random. This was planned, deliberate. My first instinct was to step back and close everything. Pretend I never saw it. But something stopped me. That same feeling from before, that quiet awareness that had been growing ever since the first night. If there were cameras, then there were recordings. And if there were recordings, then someone had been watching. For a long time. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut into the darkness inside the wall, revealing more than I expected. Cables, more than just one or two, dozens, running along the narrow space, disappearing deeper into the structure. This wasn't just one camera. This was a system. My heart started beating faster. Not from panic, not yet. From realization. I followed the cables with my eyes, tracing where they led. Toward the back, toward something hidden further inside. And that's when I heard it. A sound. Soft. Almost too quiet to notice. Breathing. I froze instantly. The kind of freeze where your body just stops. Every muscle locks. Every thought disappears. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just listened. There was again. Slow. Steady. Close. Coming from inside the wall. I pulled back immediately, nearly dropping my phone in the process. My chest tightened, and for a second, I genuinely couldn't tell if what I heard was real or just my mind trying to make sense of something impossible. But deep down, I knew. I slowly stepped away from the vent, didn't turn my back to it, didn't take my eyes off it, because if someone was inside, then they could see me too. That thought hit harder than anything else. I grabbed the vent cover and pushed it back into place, trying to act normal, trying to act like I hadn't just discovered something that shouldn't exist. Then I left the bedroom, closed the door, locked it, even though I knew locks wouldn't matter. I didn't stay in the apartment long after that. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and walked out as calmly as I could. Didn't run. Didn't look back. Only when I reached the street did I finally breathe properly. My first instinct was obvious. Call the police. But I didn't. Because what would I even say? There's someone living inside my walls. There are hidden cameras pointing into other apartments. It sounded insane. And worse. There was a chance it would disappear before anyone got there. So instead, I did something else. I waited. I sat in my car across the street from the building, watching the entrance. Hours passed. Nothing unusual. People came and went. Lights turned on and off. Everything looked normal. Until around 3 a.m. That's when I saw it. A figure. Not coming out of the front entrance. Not from the stairs, from the side of the building. A small maintenance door I had never paid attention to before. It opened just enough for someone to slip through. They were wearing dark clothes. Put up, face barely visible, but the way they moved, calm, precise, like they had done this hundreds of times. They didn't look around, didn't check if anyone was watching. They just walked away, like it was routine. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every instinct told me to stay where I was, to let it go, to forget everything. But I didn't. I stepped out of the car and followed them, at a distance, careful, quiet. They walked for about 10 minutes without stopping, then turned into a narrow street, darker, quieter, almost empty. That's where I lost them. 1 second they were there. The next, gone. No doors opening. No footsteps. Nothing. Just an empty street. I stood there for a while, trying to understand what just happened, trying to find any logical explanation. There wasn't one. So I went back home. And that was my second mistake. Because the moment I stepped into my apartment, I knew something had changed. The air felt heavier. Not metaphorically, physically, like the space itself was occupied. I moved slowly toward my bedroom door. Still locked. Just how I left it. I unlocked it, opened it. Everything looked normal. The vent was in place. Nothing out of order. For a second, I thought maybe I imagined the breathing. Maybe I overreacted. Then I noticed the bed. The blanket was slightly pulled back, just enough to show that someone had been sitting there, right where I sleep. And on the pillow, there was a small object, a note, folded, my name written on it, not printed, handwritten. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Inside, there were only a few words. Now you know. Part 3. I found a hidden camera in my apartment, but it wasn't watching me. For a long time, I just stood there holding that note. Now you know, the words weren't threatening. Not directly, but that's what made them worse. There was no anger in them, no urgency, just certainty. I read it again, and again, like maybe the meaning would change if I looked at it long enough. It didn't. Whoever wrote it knew exactly what I'd seen, which meant one thing. They had been watching me while I was discovering everything. That realization hit harder than anything else so far. Not the cameras, not the breathing, not even the figure outside. This. I slowly looked around the room. Every corner suddenly felt different. Every shadow deeper. If they had access to the walls, then there was no way to know where they were. But when they were there, I stepped back into the hallway, closing the bedroom door behind me again. This time I didn't lock it. I just stared at it, like locking it would mean pretending I was safe. And I knew I wasn't. I needed to think, logically, step by step. Someone had built a system inside the walls. Multiple cameras, cables, hidden access points. That doesn't just happen overnight. This had been there long before I moved in, which meant whoever was using it knew the building intimately. The landlord. The thought came naturally, too naturally. He had access. He controlled the apartments. He knew who lived where. And more importantly, he knew who lived alone. I grabbed my phone and pulled up his contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I stopped. If he was involved, calling him would be the worst possible move. Instead, I did something else. I searched his name. At first, nothing unusual came up. Basic records, property listings, a few complaints about maintenance. Then I went deeper. Old forums, archived pages, anything I could find. And then I found something, a thread, years old, barely any replies. The title caught my attention immediately. Anyone else have weird experiences in this building? My stomach tightened. I opened it. The first post was short, messy, like it had been written in a hurry. I think someone is entering my apartment when I'm not home. Things are moving. I hear noises at night. Landlord says it's nothing. Anyone else? There were a few replies, most of them dismissive, telling the person they were paranoid. Except one. Check the walls. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My pulse slowly picking up again. I scrolled further. There were more posts. From different users. Different times. Same building. Same complaints. Strange noises. Objects moving. Feeling watched. And every time, the same pattern. They would post. Ask questions. Get dismissed. And then, they would stop posting. No updates. No conclusions. Just silence. I didn't like that. Not all. I closed the laptop slowly. The room suddenly felt smaller. I wasn't the first. That meant one of two things. Either people were imagining things, or something had been happening here for a long time, and no one ever got out with answers. I stood up and walked back toward the bedroom. Stopped in front of the door. For a second, I hesitated. Then I opened it. The room looked exactly the same. Too clean, too still. But this time, I didn't go to the bed. I went straight to the vent. I wasn't careful anymore. I didn't try to be quiet. I pulled it off completely. Shined a flashlight inside again. The space looked the same. Narrow, dark, silent. But something was different. The cables were slightly moved. Not broken. Not disconnected. Just repositioned. Like someone had adjusted them. Recently, I felt it again. That presence. That quiet, invisible pressure. I leaned closer. Closer than before. And this time, I spoke. I know you're there. Silence. For a second, I thought nothing would happen. That I would just stand there like an idiot, talking to an empty wall. Then, from deep inside the space, a voice answered. Not loud. Not aggressive. Calm. You weren't supposed to look. I stumbled back, immediately hitting the wall behind me. My heart slammed against my chest so hard it hurt. That wasn't imagination. That wasn't a sound from pipes or echoes. That was a voice. A real one. Inside my walls. I stared at the opening, my mind racing, trying to decide what to do next. Run? Call someone? Leave everything behind? But before I could move, the voice spoke again. Closer this time. Now it's different. I felt something shift. Not physically, but in the atmosphere. Like a line had been crossed. And whatever rules were there before no longer applied. Then I heard it. Movement. Not far away. Not hidden deep inside. Right there. Just behind the thin layer of wall. Something or someone was moving toward me. Slowly. Deliberately. And for the first time since all of this started, I understood something clearly. This wasn't just about watching anymore. Final part. I found a hidden camera in my apartment, but it wasn't watching me. The sound was getting closer. Not fast. Not chaotic. Slow. Measured. Like whoever was inside didn't need a rush. Like they already knew there was nowhere for me to go. I stepped back instinctively, my eyes still locked on the dark opening in the wall. Every part of me was screaming to leave, to run, to get out of that apartment and never come back. But I didn't, because something didn't make sense. If they wanted to hurt me, they already could have. They had access. They had time. They had been watching. So why now? The movement stopped, right behind the wall, close enough that I could almost feel it. Then slowly, a hand appeared, not reaching out, not grabbing, just resting against the inside edge of the opening. Pale, Still, I didn't move, didn't breathe, and then the wall shifted, not fully opening, just enough, enough for me to see inside. And what I saw wasn't what I expected. It wasn't some hidden room. It wasn't a tunnel system. It was a narrow passage, barely enough space for a person to move. And inside it, someone was sitting, not standing, not approaching, just sitting there, looking at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I noticed something strange. They didn't look surprised. They didn't look caught. They looked tired, like this wasn't new, like this had happened before. You found it, they said quietly. Their voice was the same one I had heard earlier. Calm, controlled. I swallowed, forcing myself to speak. Who are you? They didn't answer immediately. Instead, they leaned slightly forward, just enough for the light to hit their face. And that's when I saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to recognize something. Familiar. Too familiar. I live here, they said. That's not possible, I replied instantly. This is my apartment. They shook their heads slightly. No, they said. You're just the current one. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? They exhaled slowly, like they had explained this before. They always move people in. They always say it's empty. They always wait until you notice. I felt the room tilt slightly. They? I asked. For the first time, they smiled, not in a creepy way, not like something out of a horror movie, in a way that felt resigned. The ones who own this place, they said. I thought about the landlord, about the posts online, about the people who stopped replying. What are you doing in there? I asked. They looked at the walls around them, at the narrow space, at the cables. Watching, they said, What? They didn't answer immediately. Instead, they asked something else. How long have you been here? About 3 weeks. They nodded slowly. Then it's almost time. A cold wave ran through me. Time for what? They looked directly at me. This time, no distance, no hesitation. For you to decide. Decide what? They leaned back slightly, disappearing just a little into the shadows. Stay where you are. Their voice was softer now. Or come inside. My mind went blank. That's not funny, I said. I'm not joking, they replied. Silence filled the room. I looked at the narrow passage, at the cables, at the hidden cameras, then back at them. If I don't, I asked. They held my gaze. Then someone else will take your place. I didn't understand. Not fully, but something deep inside me did. The posts, the silence, the people disappearing. They don't let people leave, do they? I said quietly. They didn't answer. They didn't have to. I stepped back, then another step, my eyes still locked on them, on that space, on that impossible reality sitting inside my walls. I'm leaving, I said. They nodded, like they expected that. Everyone says that. I didn't respond. I grabbed my keys, my phone, didn't pack anything else, and I walked out. I didn't run, not until I reached the street. Then I did. I didn't stop. I never went back. A week later, I found a new place, different building, different area, everything normal. No strange sounds, no moving objects, no cameras. For the first time in weeks, I slept until last night. I woke up suddenly. No reason, no noise, just that feeling, that same quiet awareness. I sat up slowly, looked around the room. Everything seemed fine. Then I noticed the wall, a small detail, barely visible, a thin line running from the floor to the ceiling. And for a second, I thought I saw something behind it, something move. And then Very softly, from the other side, a voice. You came back.